Good evening, Salukis. My name is Jeff Leem, and I'm the Executive Director of the SIU Alumni Association. Tonight, we are launching the first episode of an ongoing series called Saluki Sleuths. We'll take a look at the myths, the legends, and even discoveries surrounding SIU. Tonight's feature is about the canon. What is it, you ask? Is it real? Does it still exist? Well, we are about to find out. The association's Anna Toomey is going to answer those questions and more. So Anna, take it away.
Hey Salukis, this is Anna Toomey here with our very first edition of Saluki Sleuths. This time, we're uncovering the story behind the cannon. And if you're familiar with the cannon, you know it was an icon here on campus, a monument out on display for everyone to see. It brought people together, it caused some controversy, and then it suddenly disappeared right from this spot where I'm standing. People wondered why and how. We went digging and found some answers. A path through the University Museum takes you back 200 years to the corner the cannon calls home. The curators watch over it.
My name is W.M. Stoger, and I am the curator of exhibits at the University Museum.
My name is Susanna Munson. I'm the curator of the collections at the University Museum.
The display is simple compared to the cannon's colorful past. The chunks of paint that used to layer it have been preserved.
The cannon has been a popular piece of campus history and legend for a long time. Students used to paint the cannon for homecomings and other celebrations, probably political protests as well.
Alumni remember the back and forth paint jobs as frequent and unpredictable.
I think it was an exciting piece for a lot of people. I mean, it was on campus during some pretty turbulent times.
Until one day, it was gone. Susanna Munson is piecing together the trail, starting with where the cannon came from.
The cannon was made in the early 1800s, but came to SIU campus in 1878. To be used by the Douglas Corps cadets to mark their drills.
Susanna says the cannon was live and functioning. The cadets used it until around 1891.
At that point, they stopped using it, and it just became a piece that sat on campus out in front of the north entrance.
As many of our alumni know, that's when the real show started.
I do think that the years of being painted actually protected the cannon a lot by keeping the actual surface of the cannon protected from the elements.
Alumni say it was often the fraternities who took turns painting the cannon, but we discovered it was also a fraternity behind the cannon's disappearance.
In 1985, the Sigma Phi Epsilon fraternity, for part of a service project, removed the cannon, took all the paint off of it. That caused a lot of controversy on campus. People really enjoyed having the campus cannon sitting right there where they could interact with it and sit on it.
Decades later, the cannon still has people fired up.
There was a lot of concern about who took it and why they took it and was it coming back and why would you take it in the first place and will it be the same?
The cannon holds a real soft spot in a lot of people's hearts of certain generations. A lot of old alumni come through wanting to know where it's at, what happened to it, and they're all pretty excited to see that it's on display in the museum.
So there you have it. It does exist. Now I want to know more. What's the story behind this? Anna, Susanna, please tell us the story.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and thank you all for watching. We've been having a lot of fun digging into this. Susanna, I'm going to have you introduce yourself first. She's a curator here at the museum who's been working very hard to uncover all of these questions we have about the cannon right behind us here.
My name is Susanna Munson, and I'm the curator of the collections at the University Museum at SIUC.
It seems like you've had a lot of fun researching this. Tell us just briefly how your experience has been digging into such a big part of SIU history.
Oh, yeah. Well, research is always kind of fun, get to dig in there and see what you can find out. So it's just started with our own records, what we had in our files from when this was donated. Now that turned out to mostly be things that happened after it was removed. So the work that they had done, I don't remember if we had receipts for that. We have receipts for all kinds of things. But the work that was done to clean it up, they had wooden wagon wheels built for it by an Amish wheelwright, actually. And so when they donated the cannon, they also donated the wheels. But they're not attached, obviously.
Right.
So I started with our files, and that gave me the last years of its history. So in order to kind of go back further, I worked with Special Collections, and they helped find a lot of the photos. Many of those are out of the yearbook or just campus, the university photographers taking photos on campus. So, and then through that, got to newspaper articles from the DE and the Southern Illinoisan, and they're just full of all kinds of good little tidbits of information. When it was donated, we did actually get the real story about where it came from, which was known on campus, but was also intermixed with other rumors about where it might have come from.
Exactly. You've really been digging through this. So we want to mention to you guys, any questions or comments you might have, please ask, because Susanna's a wealth of information here, and she's really been looking into this, and I gotta tell you, has uncovered some amazing stuff. And we're actually going to flip over to some additional photos. Susanna was talking about going through those newspapers and yearbooks, and she set aside I think it's about 9 or 10 photos here that are kind of added on that show the cannon in a different light. So we're going to pull up that slideshow, and you can follow along with us here. This first one, Susanna, is the one from 1953, and you know this better than me. So can you kind of describe this location where this is at?
Yeah, so this is in front, near the north entrance of campus, in front of Old Main. So this is still Old Main at the time. And where the flagpole is now at the very end of Normal, this was a little further back from that. So same area, but just further back so that it was more in front of Old Main.
So the cannon has moved.
It's moved several times,
okay.
yeah.
So this
now,
thing has been around.
I can't find anything about where it was between the 1890s and about 1940.
Okay, it just
was
completely right. That's kind of a tough thing to move too. Yeah. We're going to move to our next photo here, which is kind of a funny one. I really enjoyed this one of Captain Hook and the crocodile.
Yeah, I don't have any context for this. This was one that Special Collections found, and I believe it was just maybe one of the university photography pictures. I don't think it came out of a yearbook, but I really like this one because of the cars in the back, and obviously because the Captain Hook and the
Isn't that fascinating? 1959. I didn't even think about that, but you look at the cars in the back. I mean, it just goes to show how long this cannon has been a part of campus history. And I know a lot of our alumni watching it probably had parents, that were here for this. I mean, it's just been around. Not only have they seen it, but their parents may have as well, which is just super fascinating. We're going to our next photo here from 1965, and this kind of shows it after one of those paint jobs, huh?
Yes, yeah, that one is from the yearbook in 1965, and my favorite thing about this one is obviously the Gus Bode all over it. I thought that was nice.
What's that about? Tell me what that's about.
I don't know a whole lot about Gus Bode, but I know that when I first came to school here and I would read the DE, there was always Gus Bode, and I knew, talking to people, that he was an old character in the DE, and that he would always say, Gus Bode says whatever Gus Bode said. So so that they covered the cannon in Gus Bode graffiti is really interesting to me.
That is very interesting.
He's almost like an eternal student at SIU.
I know, his spirit lives on. No, that's super fascinating. Another one from 1965 there. We're moving on to our next one from 1966, which we know has a little story behind that. Tell us, Susanna.
So this one is also from the yearbook, and if you see the mention of the tradition down there, I don't know if we want to talk about that right now or in a little bit, but here are some students attempting to get the tradition to work, I guess. I'm not sure.
Exactly. Yeah, they had it, on campus. It was talked about that it would go off if a virgin walked in front of it.
Yes.
But a lot of people like to say they haven't heard the cannon go off in a long time at SIU. This one I know is talked about so much. People get a kick out of it. And you said this was the yearbook, right?
Yes, this was actually in the yearbook, and it was a very prevalent story or legend. One of the things that I found out while doing research was that a lot of schools all over the country have similar legends about defunct things working when virgins walk in front of them. And all of that is sort of based on this concept that every school wanted to be the party school. And so the idea was our campus is so wild and crazy that you can't find a virgin on it. So that is sort of part, I guess, of SIU.
Like SIU. Okay.
SIU trying to flex its party school credentials at the time.
Right.
So.
And I feel like just from, looking at your research is like the cannon was a symbol of a lot of the fun party cultures. I mean, we talked about the fraternities painting that for events and all sorts of different things. It was kind of a way to bring everybody together.
Yes, well, most people. There were some people that thought it was vandalism and, of course, hated it, but the student body really appreciated it.
And we can tell that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to flip to our next picture here. Make sure I'm getting to the right ones. Next one we've got from 1967, which I just love this shot. I think it's a really great perspective shot. Do you remember where this one came from?
This one came from Special Collections as well, and I think was just one of the university photographs. Oh no, I'm sorry, that one was actually in the yearbook as well.
Oh, okay. So that's just looks like somebody maybe standing in front of it or posing.
It's a weird shot through somebody's arm, but I think that's Old Main there behind it. That would be while it was still in place out there. So
okay, from 1967, we're gonna
the artsy shots.
It is really artsy and pretty. We're going on to our next photo from 1970, which I was trying to read what it says. Miss Southern on there?
Yes.
Do you know what that's about?
I don't know if that was, for like a Miss Southern Illinois University, pageant or something. I'm not familiar with it, but yeah. So as you can see, fraternities may have painted it, but also campus events got represented on there as well.
It's just cool to kind of.
I couldn't tell. Did it have someone's name on it?
I can't tell either.
Oh, it just says Miss SIU on the side.
Miss SIU. Okay. Now, I know this one is one of your favorites.
Yes.
We're going to our next photo, which you'll be able to see. Actually, this was when Old Main was burning, right? And the cannon. Tell us a little bit about this one.
Yeah, so this is when Old Main was on fire in 1969, and you can see the students there with the fire hose. I assume those are students because they're not dressed like firemen, but it's strange to me that students are holding the fire hose. Right. Anybody will help, right? So yeah, I thought this was really interesting because it's two really big things on campus represented in the same photo, the Old Main fire and this cannon that everybody has always cared so much about.
And obviously that Old Main fire is a whole other story, but it's just, there's the cannon. Just hanging out. It's just a reminder of how much it's been a part of campus history.
Yeah, it was right there in the middle of what they referred to as the Old Main Mall. So
wow. We're going to go to our next photo this looks like a newspaper clipping from 1968. And this is just one, it just looks like we can see some students in the background, maybe a class, faculty, just another kind of beauty shot.
Yeah, it looks like here's a little context for the cannon.
Absolutely. I know it's featured a lot in the newspaper.
It seems like especially in the 50s and 60s that it really showed up a lot.
It was so popular. Now I'm going to go to the next one, which I know you have some stuff to say about this. This is 1985. Ancient cannon survives bomb. That's a lot of questions.
So the cannon was removed from where it sat, which at that point had been moved further down to where the flagpole is now, right at the end of Normal, facing Woody Hall, facing Mill Street, but between Woody Hall and Quigley. Mm-hmm. So the cannon was removed on September 25th, 1985, at daybreak. Now, what happened at 1 o'clock in the morning before that was someone strapped a homemade explosive to it, and I suppose they were attempting to blow it up, although trying to blow up a cannon seems like more work than most homemade explosives might be able to pull off. So luckily it didn't do much to it.
Wow.
It probably knocked a little bit of paint off, but otherwise it was undamaged.
I mean, and you've been touching on that, how the emotions surrounding the cannon. I mean, I'm honestly not surprised. I guess I'm not surprised that somebody would.
Well, I guess it
this.
depends on what they knew, because for most people on campus,
Yeah.
they came to school Wednesday morning and it was gone.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was somebody who knew or just a weird coincidence that somebody was messing with it the day before.
Right.
The day that it was taken.
There's a mystery there.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
who
no,
was
that's-
it? Did they have insider knowledge?
Right.
Or lots of questions.
That's
yeah.
one of those mysteries that people probably don't want you to solve.
Exactly. I know. I think it was Carbondale Police. I think is, or maybe it was Campus Police that were in here. Campus security who were dealing with this, and it just goes to show. I mean, a lot of people very, very fired up about this cannon and its removal. We're going to go to our next photo, which is the cannon on the wheels. And you actually mentioned something we hadn't talked about yet, is like the making of the wheels. And so tell us that and where the wheels are now.
The wheels are at the museum archive with the rest of the collection. So they had the wheels made first, and those were donated when they donated the cannon itself, which happened in 1988. So it took them several years to have it cleaned and restored. So in 1988, they donated this with the wheels, which the wheels, as I mentioned, were made by an Amish wheelwright in Arthur, Illinois, and they cost just over $1,000 to make. Really? And so after it was actually, the whole time that the fraternity had it before it was donated, and then once we had it, there was still talk about having, the mount built for it so the wheels could go onto that. And it'd be a whole piece again, but they never got the money raised for the main part of it, and so it didn't end up happening then. But we still have the wheels. All the students think they're wagon wheels, so all the students learn about the cannon when they say, oh, there's wagon wheels, and we say, actually they're cannon wheels. So
that's super interesting, and we're going to toss it over to Jeff, who's got a question for you.
That is a beautiful picture. And I was just going to ask you to maybe go into a little bit more detail about what would it take to bring that back to its original form, where we could put the cannon on display with the wheels and with the attachment and so forth. Has that ever been a discussion, or?
Yes, there was a plan to have, and they actually, part of what we have in our records at the museum are some of the bids that they got to make the caisson for the cannon that the wheels would go on, and then it could be moved around. And so the bid that they got in the late 80s was about $5,000. So I'm not sure what that would be now. And I am loath to say that the Alumni Association was raising the money, and it never happened, but things happen the way they do. So I'm not sure what it would take now. We'd have to get more bids for that, at this point, unless somebody wants to honor a 30-year-old $5,000 bid. That'd be great.
Right. It's a lot to restore.
Yes.
I mean, when you're dealing with a piece of history that is, more than 100 years old. It's just like,
and as he can attest to, it's very heavy, so it has to be a very sturdy piece to hold it.
Absolutely. Again, it's just great to see it in person too. And when it was removed, though, you touched on this a little bit, Susanna, but the desire to make it a historical artifact, if you want to talk about that, I mean, to its position where it is now, that desire.
So when it was removed by the Sigma Phi Epsilon fraternity, they did so with the permission of then SIU president Summit, I believe is how you say his name. So it was all agreed on that they would take it and they would have it restored, and it was envisioned as a long-term service project that the fraternity would work on. It was done with the approval of the president, and Also involved during some of those talks was the then director of the museum, because it was kind of always the plan for it to get restored, cleaned up, and then come here.
Do you know how they got the paint chunks off? Do you know?
No,
how
I
that's
don't know.
doable?
Some of the old newspaper articles, so that was kind of interesting. Some of the old newspaper articles talk about people painting it and the police seeing them do it and just driving by and not stopping them. And then other people talk about seeing students with rags and turpentine out there taking the paint off. So something probably along those lines, little rags and turpentine.
And on that note, I'll have you show us, they actually have the paint chunks, some of the chunks of paint here, which is, to me, very fascinating to see. If you want, I mean.
Yeah, so this is, it's hard to see, I'm sure, from this distance, but this has got to be, I wouldn't even know how many layers of paint. 20 layers of paint, and then some of it actually looks like plaster, like maybe it had been plastered.
Right.
But all different colors. There's purple and blue and red and orange and yellow and just whatever you could think of.
Wow.
And so you can see with these why one of the nicknames for the cannon was the cannon of many colors.
Yeah.
Oh, it just
Literally
dropped a little
every,
dust.
I know you're going to be covered in cannon paint.
Yeah, but this one you can kind of see a little bit better the separation
Wow.
between those layers. But some of this does feel like plaster.
So many memories. I mean, when you
Oh,
look
gosh.
at that, it just makes you think of all the different organizations and people that have,
And
that have
events,
painted.
yeah.
I know. It's just, are you guys planning to put that out eventually, or do you think you'll keep the paint chips in storage?
Well, I guess it kind of depends on
Yeah.
what we're doing with the cannon at the time. So most of the time the cannon has just been here sort of as a landmark, but in a more protected area.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't always sit here. Sometimes it sits around the corner. But when we do and now that we've done all this research, we can do a better exhibit on the cannon. But when we do something more specific about the cannon, or maybe campus landmarks or something like that, then we would probably bring them out. We probably wouldn't leave them out all the time with it, because they're not very pretty. They're interesting, but
And they're kind of fragile too, so
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah, a bunch of dirt just fell on me. So
You know, what is still unknown about the cannon? Were there things as you were doing your research that you just couldn't find the answer to?
Well, my main question was, did somebody know that it was coming down, and is that why they tried to blow it up with their homemade explosive? I don't know. Most things really focused on two main things, which was where did the cannon come from? There were several ideas about where it had come from, and then some of the just emotions around it, you know, how much people loved painting on it, how much people hated it being painted on, how they felt like it was the center of campus. A lot of people, that's why they were so upset when it came down, was because they felt like it was the nucleus, is what someone said, the nucleus of campus, and you've removed it.
So we do have a question that you'll want to answer. Someone's wanting
Okay.
to know, where is the museum on campus?
Oh, the museum is in the north end of Feiner. If you're familiar with campus, there's the Circle Drive outside, and we are right there. We've got great big windows in the north hall. This cannon right now is in the south hall, but if you come into this end of the building, you'll see both halls. You'll be right in between both of them. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good thing to know, because it's really awesome to see this in person too, especially if you're a big fan of history, because you might know this better than me, Susanna, but is it rare to come across, you know, something from the 1800s? I guess a cannon is sturdy,
A
right?
cannon is, a cannon lasts longer than most things. Well, you know, in some places it is fairly rare, but actually in our collection, because the collection began in 1869, we've got a lot of stuff from then and even older, because some of the people at the time donated things that were their families or historic pieces in the 1800s, so they might be from the late 1700s or earlier in the 1800s.
And to give people an idea of how far this goes back, we talked about it a little bit in our video about who donated this. What was the Department of War at the time, which I guess now would be the Department of Defense. I was curious, and I don't know if you know this, was it customary to just give gifts like this, or?
I think that it must have been. So as the video mentioned in the beginning, this was cast around 1810, somewhere between 1810 and 1840. Definitely before the Civil War. It was said that it was used in the Civil War, but without getting in touch with the Department of Defense and maybe knowing something a little more specific about this piece, I don't know how you would find out where it was used,
Right.
but it might be possible. So I think that the reason that they donated, I don't know if it was common, but because we had the Douglas Corps of Cadets here, that's why they did it, because they were affiliated.
And this was something they used in their drills. You talked about
Yes,
that.
they used them for artillery drills. They actually donated 2 cannons, along with other armaments and certain things. Nobody knows what happened. I mean, somebody knows what happened to them.
That's what I was going to ask next. Do you know what happened?
I don't know what happened to them, but there were a lot of weapons that were donated, I think, to the Corps. So maybe when they disbanded, those got put somewhere. But the cannon, and nobody knows where the other cannon is that I could tell. So this is one of 2 that was donated here by the Department of War. So
It's got a friend out there
it's
somewhere.
it's got a little buddy somewhere.
And, next we'll go to, I don't know if you remember these off the top of your head, but the alumni stories. I know we had an article about that if you want me to find that. But if you want to tell us about, we were reading some, that this one is from 1963. Let me know if you need this, Susanna. These are the stories the alumni actually shared. I think some of that article might be a little bit just rumors, maybe. But
Yeah. Some of them probably are. In this article they talk about some of the other ideas about where it had come from.
Right.
So actually, a former faculty member who was at SIU, Eli Lentz, wrote a book called 75 Years in Retrospect, 1874 to 1948, which about SIU's history. And in there, he didn't know exactly where the cannon came from, but his suggestion was that because Memorial Day, there's one of the places where Memorial Day is said to have originated is around in this area, Murfreesboro, Carbondale. So the Grand Army of the Republic, he suggested, perhaps donated it so that they could mark the beginning of the Memorial Day parade, which started here on campus. So that was one of the legends. And then the other legend was the true one. The Department of War donated it.
Right. That's super interesting.
It was featured in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch in a photo where it was painted white with red polka dots with the caption, "Itsy bitsy teeny weeny red and white polka dot cannon," which doesn't rhyme, but it's fun. Oh gosh, yes, my favorite one. So all of the stories that I saw about this said a few years ago, but it turns out it was around the early 1900s, if it happened at all. But this was live still at the time, and some students filled it with nails and rocks and whatever they could find, and they lit a really long fuse, and they ran away, and they let it go off and shot down Normal Street toward Mill Street. And the story says that stuff ended up all the way down at Mill Street, and that a number of windows were blown out of nearby buildings, which would have been these that are, Old Main, Woody, Quigley.
It seems just funny, especially on a college campus, having a cannon. I guess you would expect students to try something.
If it was the early 1900s, I guess they had a different idea of risk on campus.
Right.
But if it had still been like that in the 60s, I think that would have been a big problem. SIU would have really hated that.
I know. Can you imagine? I can't
imagine anybody doing it ever. But
and I think it's in there. They actually had to plug it at
right after that is when they plugged it. Shortly after that is when they plugged it and made took the fuse and everything, so it could not
be.
No, it's all filled up now, right?
Because we know students of later decades probably would have loved to try that.
if something's there to play with, people will play with it.
It's going to be there. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, as we start to wrap up, Susanna, I was curious and you talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but researching this, was it, you're looking at a lot of newspapers, were there any big gaps, because when I just say when you go into Google and you kind of type it in, not a lot comes up instantly. You do have to kind of, at least I noticed in my simple research, so you have to dig.
You have to dig because a lot of times the photos are just small photos that are sort of incidental, just kind of fill in a place, just talking about campus. So, but they almost all will tell you a little bit about some kind of part of one of the stories of the canon. So, I'm sorry.
Absolutely. And if you want to tell us too, kind of just a message to everyone watching about why they should come down here and check it out in person.
Sure. Well, the canon in person is it's a cannon. It's not super exciting, but it's really kind of cool to see like a real old cannon. Like,
Especially if you're one of the ones who painted it.
I would love
See
to
your
know.
friend.
Yes, I was going to say. If you look at the museum's website, museum.siu.edu, you can find my email address. And if you have stories about yourself and the cannon, I would love to hear them, and I will include it in our records. And if you want to remain anonymous, please just tell me, and that is okay.
Absolutely. And then we'll have you touch quick too on the Old Main exhibit coming up, which is kind of tied to the cannon, but it's one of a lot of interest too.
Yeah, and coming up is a loose term. It's
Working
in
on
the
it.
process, right? So in this spot that we are in this particular exhibit, this is the Southern Illinois History exhibit, and this corner of it is our rotating exhibit. So this part over the years will have a number of different smaller featured sort of exhibits. So we are planning one. We have a good deal of Old Main artifacts, so we're trying to come up with a little display for in here to talk about Old Main, both of them. We have pieces of both of Old Main's. We have a number of pieces of artwork that were done by people who saw Old Main burn. So we have drawings and paintings and paper cutting, and all kinds of stuff. So once I started noticing how many pieces of art we had about Old Main on fire, I thought, well, we should do something with that.
Right.
Put those all together.
That's going to be great. There's a lot
it'll
of
be so fun.
awesome stuff here. And thank you so much, Susanna. Thank you for
Absolutely.
all the work you did to help us with this. It is so fascinating and just interesting to really dive into the details of this. So we really appreciate you sharing,
Yeah.
and we'll definitely be coming to you with more questions as we
Sure.
find them, and we hope our alumni share and just let us know, because this is a great artifact on campus.
Yeah.
Jeff, we're going to send it back to you to wrap us up.
Well, thank you, Anna. It sounds like we have some more saluting to do based on the research. So, Susanna, thank you again for all the time you put into this. I think it is just a fabulous story, and what a way to start out Saluki Sleuths with such a historical story like this. So,
Was glad to be here. Thank you.
I want to thank Caleb Hale as well, who is behind the camera. Caleb, thank you for doing such an outstanding job. We hope everybody enjoyed the first episode about the cannon. Look for news about our next episode on our website, or check out all of our social media channels. We'll be posting information about what's coming next. We're going to keep guessing on what it is. But if you have an idea about that you want to add to this series, that you want Anna to dig deeper on or into, please let us know. We've got a lot of material for a number of episodes, but we really like to hear from you. So please send us what you'd like us to dig into, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. So with that, the first episode is in the books. Again, thank you to everybody. Thank you to all of you for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. So until we meet again, take care. Go Dogs.